Like any other cosmic event, it began with discovery, a silent flash in a sky survey, a new object streaking into the solar system. But what followed shattered every expectation. On July 1st, 2025, astronomers detected a three-eyed, designated interstellar body Atlas, racing into our neighborhood at a staggering 130,000 km/h. It had the appearance of a comet at first glance, swift, bright, and icy. But when NASA pointed its instruments toward it, something was wrong. The tail of the object was not trailing behind as it should have. It was pointed toward the sun, a direction that defies not only experience but physics itself. Solar radiation should push comet dust away forever. However, this cloud was battling upstream. Was this a confusion from perspective, a data error, or something far stranger? Because the more telescopes looked, the clearer the anomaly became. The tail didn't behave like gas and dust escaping a rock. It appeared to be thrust. And if that's true, if this tail isn't passive but powered, then 3i Atlas isn't just visiting, it's arriving. And it may be under control. When 3i Atlas first entered our solar system, scientists knew they had something unusual. Only two interstellar visitors had ever passed through, Oumuamua in 2017 and Borisov in 2019. Both stirred controversy, but 3i Atlas quickly exceeded them in mystery. The Atlas survey in Chile flagged it first, but it was NASA's early images that stunned the community. The object's so-called plume or tail wasn't following the rules. It didn't trail behind the object away from the sun, like every comet that has been studied. It was pointing in the sun's direction directly. Bryce Bolin, a seasoned cometologist, called it blobby, sunward, and completely unsurpassed by any previous record books. Gemini South and the LEL Observatory confirmed the anomaly. Frame after frame showed the same thing, a persistent, dense jet moving in the wrong direction. Solar radiation pressure, the invisible wind of nature, ought to be pushing everything away from the sun, but this dust was seemingly being pushed into the wind, against the flow of photons, defying the most basic dynamics of comet behavior. The orbital data made it worse. A retrograde path nearly aligned with Earth's orbit with an eccentricity over 6 meant it wasn't just unbound from the sun. It was slicing through our system like a blade, ignoring every rule in the book. By late July, even the Hubble Space Telescope had stabilized, capturing high-resolution images of the same narrow sunward arc, never changing shape, never weakening. Then, out of nowhere, a startling idea crept into scientific conversations. What if this isn't a tail at all? The mystery deepened when the James Webb Space Telescope performed spectral analysis on the object. What it found wasn't just unusual, it was unprecedented. Comets in our solar system are usually dominated by water vapor, with a bit of carbon dioxide. 3i Atlas flipped that ratio completely. Its CO2 to water ratio was 8.1, 4 standard deviations above the solar system norm. Only one other known comet even got close to that, and it was considered an outlier. This went beyond bizarre chemistry, it was alien. These ratios suggested literally that 3i Atlas had developed in a completely different planetary nursery, one where CO2 freezes while water remains trapped. But that wasn't the only surprise. The Very Large Telescope in Chile detected significant levels of atomic nickel, a metal rarely seen in such quantities unless something unusual is happening. Even stranger, there was no iron vapor, which almost always accompanies nickel in solar system comets. This wasn't just a different mix of elements. It was a completely distinct chemical structure, a makeup not seen in any other natural body that's ever entered our skies. And when that is combined with the object's motion, the orientation of its plume, and the shape of its tail, you don't get a meteor. You get a system, something that behaves more like a machine than a rock. The carbon dioxide didn't occur in random venting. It was focused, consistent, and exerting enough force to shift the object's path, similar to propulsion. Here's where things leave the realm of strange and enter the domain of disturbing. As astronomers tracked 3i Atlas's trajectory, they noticed a subtle but persistent deviation, one that couldn't be explained by gravity alone. The standard orbit models began to drift. Residuals, those minuscule differences between predicted and actual positions, started pointing in a single, consistent direction, toward the sun, aligned with the plume. When researchers incorporated a small, non-gravitational acceleration into the models, suddenly everything lined up. The best fit showed a sunward acceleration of 4 × 10⁻⁷, Tiny, yes, but enough to shift the object's path by thousands of kilometers over several weeks. That is the same order of magnitude as the push exerted by ion thrusters in spacecraft. And the resemblance didn't stop there. Just like an ion engine, the plume was narrow, collimated, and didn't spread out like dust. The material wasn't fluffy or chaotic. It was dense, heavy, and held a tight formation. In simple terms, the plume looked manufactured. A.V. Loeb, never one to shy away from bold theories, proposed that if an alien probe were slowing down, this is exactly how it would carry it out, firing engines toward the sun at perihelion to maximize the Oberth effect to slow down. And, disturbingly, that's exactly what 3I Atlas appears to be doing. The numbers don't lie. Natural sublimation cannot explain the amount of directional force. The object isn't being pushed by sunlight. It's being driven by something else. And now we reach the most critical moment in the narrative. On October 30th, 2025, 3I Atlas will pass behind the sun, vanishing from every telescope on Earth. This is referred to as solar conjunction, a period when radio signals are blocked and visual tracking becomes impossible. In other words, this is the perfect moment to hide a maneuver. If this object is being propelled, if it's intelligent or even autonomous, this is when it would act. A change of course made while behind the sun would go unnoticed until it reappears, at which point it could be on a completely new path, and the timing couldn't be more suspicious. Every major planetary defense team is observing. The trajectory before conjunction places the object near Mars, Venus, and Jupiter in a precise sequence of flybys, with odds lower than 1 in 20,000. The eccentricity of its orbit isn't just unbound. It's nearly a straight line, 6 times greater than the norm for interstellar objects. This isn't the typical chaotic tumble of space debris. It's controlled, calculated, and heading into a blind spot. Behind the curtain of the sun, anything could occur. And when it reemerges, the world will be watching with bated breath to see if it still respects the rules or reveals a plan no one saw coming. As the days passed and 3I Atlas approached its perihelion, researchers worldwide turned their attention to something that had remained, until this point on the fringe of this investigation, the composition of the plume itself. GST's spectrographs weren't just collecting light. They were dissecting the chemical spirit of the visitor, and what they uncovered only deepened the mystery. The chaos was not visible in the spectrum signature of typical cometary dust. Instead, it revealed something focused, even engineered. The handwriting was dominated by monoenergetic particles, not the mix of velocities and elements you'd expect from outgassing, but a consistent narrow range of speeds, a hallmark of ion propulsion, where charged particles move in uniform flows. Though no xenon, the typical human-made ion propellant, was detected, the presence of CO2 and atomic nickel, both of which can be ionized under the right conditions, was undeniable. The ratios were tight, the dispersion low, and the directional vector of the jet matched perfectly with the non-gravitational acceleration. It was almost as if the object was generating controlled thrust not by accident, but intentionally. And if that is the case, then the question is not just what it's doing, but why it's doing it now. The trajectory of 3I Atlas already defied expectations, but as orbital analysts dug deeper into its flight path, what they found was bordering on the statistically impossible. This interstellar object was not simply passing through. It was threading a cosmic needle, skimming past Mars on October 3rd, then Venus in November, and Jupiter the following March. Each flyby was timed within narrow orbital windows. The odds of a random interstellar object aligning this precisely with 3 planets in succession were less than 1 in 20,000. And this wasn't just a matter of distance. The stance of approach placed 3I Atlas within 5 degrees of the ecliptic, nearly aligned with Earth's orbital plane, a corridor rarely used by natural interstellar debris, which typically plunges in from steep angles. The pattern felt more like a flight plan than a coincidence. Some mission planners at JPL whispered about a gravity assist sequence, the kind used by human spacecraft to gain or lose velocity with minimal fuel. In this case, though, the object did not appear to be accelerating away. It was slowing down, almost as if it were preparing for insertion into a stable orbit. And if you wanted to cover up that move, you'd wait for solar conjunction, just as 3I Atlas is currently doing. Supercomputers in the labs were continuously churning through millions of simulations, trying to fit 3I Atlas into known models. Dust dynamics, gas sublimation, rotational jets, thermal fracturing, nothing worked. The standard comet outgassing algorithms couldn't replicate the consistency of the sunward plume. nor explain the object's stable and persistent acceleration vector. The team at the Minor Planet Center began a What if these objects weren't separate phenomena but a sequence, each one presenting a distinct test, a distinct clue like breadcrumbs across time? MUA presented a shape and motion problem. Borisov put us to the test, chemistry models. 3i Atlas, it was the issue of propulsion, the trajectory, the timing, the window behind the sun. The concept was risky, perhaps unprovable, but it fit the data disturbingly well. These weren't just objects. They were probes. Each one watching, measuring, reacting. Not alive, but unable to communicate with human senses, yet designed to observe a species inching closer to galactic literacy. If true, the implications are staggering. We're not just noticing them. They've been noticing us and choosing exactly when to show up. Behind the scenes, internal Slack channels, encrypted university forums, and non-indexed journals began to murmur the same term: engineered approach. It was not yet a recognized hypothesis. No peer-reviewed journal wanted to touch it. But the calculations didn't lie. The velocity, eccentricity, and alignment with 3 planetary flybys, the sunward plume, the CO2 chemistry, all the atomic nickel signatures pointed in one direction: intentionality. When you factor in the precise timing of Earth's conjunction with the perihelion, the theory gained credence: blackout. Some even began referring to the Ober-Earth maneuver timing not as a curiosity, but as a strategy. If a civilization wanted to send silent, autonomous scouts, non-communicative but self-correcting, they would behave exactly like this. It is difficult to detect small accelerations, evasive actions when no one is looking, and arrival paths that appear just within the bounds of randomness, but only if you look at each one in isolation. The true picture only emerges when the dots are connected. In whispers, researchers began calling 3i Atlas's third node, and I'm curious aloud. What will the fourth one do? Because once is a fluke, twice is a pattern, 3 times. That's a message, not written or spoken, but left in orbits, dust, and light. And then the conversation shifted, not just among astronomers, but across institutions. Because assuming this is a probe, or worse, a sensor, then we are not just observers. We are the observed. That means our telescopes, our radar, our reactions, our science. All of it becomes part of the response, a kind of feedback loop, a test. What if 3i Atlas is the equivalent of a planetary capture, a floating experiment in the void, waiting to see when and how a species reacts, not to make contact, but to see who's watching? The notion isn't science fiction anymore. It's baked into our most advanced AI models and SETI protocols. The idea of passive probes, of lurkers designed to blend in until an entire civilization is technologically advanced enough to detect anomalies and notice patterns. 3i Atlas is now offering us one more window of invisibility, a moment behind the sun, a cosmic curtain call where what happens next may not be in our control. Because perhaps we're no longer the experimenters. We are the investigation, and maybe that's why its tail looks like propulsion, because it's not escaping, it's signaling. And the only thing more unsettling than seeing it now is realizing how long it's been watching us already. As the international astronomical community kept reanalyzing 3i Atlas, a disturbing pattern began to emerge, not in the object itself, but in what it was doing to us. Information from observatories across South America, Australia, and Europe demonstrated comparable behaviors in their tracking systems. Glitches that were unusual when observing 3i Atlas. Brief but repeatable signal loss and unexplained delays in data transmission. These weren't mechanical failures. They only happened when concentrating on this object. The data anomalies were so consistent that several teams began wondering whether 3i Atlas was producing low-level electromagnetic interference. Not enough to damage, but enough to distort. Some likened it to a probe testing our instruments, almost like a scanner searching for resonant frequencies. It was not broadcasting in a conventional sense. It was probing. What made this disturbing was the method by which these disruptions aligned with specific telescope frequencies, especially within the narrow windows used for deep space communication. It's as if the object didn't want to be heard. It wanted to find out how and who was listening. This way, light, the anomaly, was no longer just an outlier. It evolved into a model, a diagnostic pattern. And if that's true, then maybe 3i Atlas isn't just visiting. We are being diagnosed. with the Vera C. Rubin Observatory preparing to enter full operational status. Astronomers are forecasting a near future where dozens of interstellar objects could be discovered each year. That should be good news, but instead it's raising alarm. Because now that we know what to look for, retrograde trajectories, hyperbolic orbits, unusual non-gravitational accelerations, tail behavior, we're seeing shadows. Several objects in the Rubin pre-survey data show brief passages through the solar system's interior, with suspiciously similar features. Partial sunward plumes, unexplained speed anomalies, even alignment with planetary flybys. Some never reappeared. Others went unnoticed until the due date, due to poor weather or observational gaps. And all of a sudden, 3I Atlas appears less like a rare cosmic guest and more like one of many. A visible node in an invisible network. Researchers began modeling hypothetical trajectories that link these sightings together. The result was chilling. Dozens of possible tracks that thread through our solar system with astonishing accuracy, but only reveal themselves when the observer is sophisticated enough to see the patterns. Now a few scientists speak in whispers about a possible grid, an ancient watchtower in the galaxy, invisible until it's too late to ignore. Not all scientists agree that 3I Atlas is engineered. A new group of astrochemists is pushing a counter-theory, that what we're seeing is not engineered behavior, but a new class of extreme interstellar naturalism. In this model, 3I Atlas is not a probe. It's a byproduct of a violent planetary death in another star system, ejected during a collision or even a supernova-induced system collapse. The plume, in this case, could be explained by materials and exotic volatiles we've never encountered, ones that produce directed sublimation under stellar radiation in unexpected ways. The nickel content, the CO2 dominance, the sunward jets, perhaps it's all a side effect of alien geology, not alien engineering. But this theory doesn't dismiss the strangeness. It simply replaces intention with extremity. And even within this framework, the item transforms into something sacred, a time capsule, a messenger not of will but of conditions so foreign they appear designed. In other words, whether it's technology or nature, 3I Atlas is showing us that the galaxy is more than strange. It is capable of appearing intelligent even when it isn't. And that alone rewrites our place in it. Even as the world watches 3I Atlas prepare to disappear behind the sun, alerts from Rubin's automated system are flagging something else, another fast-moving object inbound from interstellar space. It doesn't have a confirmed orbit yet, but its trajectory is steep and initial brightness curves suggest a nucleus without a coma, a silent intruder. No tail, no flare-ups, just a clean, cold approach. Scientists are scrambling to designate it. Could it be 4I, name pending? In that case, what will it bring? Will it be silent like Oumuamua, precise and fiery like Borisov, or impossible like 3I Atlas? The timing itself is terrifying. Statistically, it's nearly impossible to have 3 of these distinct interstellar visitors in a single decade, let alone 4 in 5 years. Except if we were never looking in the right places before. Rubin's predictions, paired with new AI-assisted orbital anomaly detectors, predict a storm of data so intense it will crash through every current model of planetary dynamics. Some believe this is the real story. 3I Atlas isn't just a message. It's the prelude, the kind of marker species leave behind when they're about to make contact or make sure you're ready for what's next. We constructed telescopes to examine the void. We launched probes to touch the edge of the solar system. We pointed infrared lenses to look back into the past to see the formation of galaxies. But in all our ambition to look outward, we never imagined something might be looking back. And 3I Atlas has shattered that illusion. It didn't come screaming with radio waves or shining with impossible lights. It came quietly, elegantly, masked in the language of nature, dust, gas, trajectory. But buried in those numbers was a different kind of grammar, one not meant to be heard but comprehended. A pointed tail against the solar wind, an acceleration that resists gravity, chemistry that is out of place here, timing that threads planetary alignments with the precision of an orbital scalpel. And now, at the moment when energy is at its peak, just as it reaches its closest point to the sun, it vanishes behind the one place we cannot follow. What happens behind that curtain? Maybe nothing, maybe everything. Because in that silence, in that shadow, we are being tested. Not with fire or invasion or messages in the sky, but with patterns, clues, and just enough friction to see if we're paying attention. And if we are, what will we do with what we've seen? This may not be the story of a spacecraft from another world. This may be the story of our civilization, which has just crossed a threshold. The moment we stopped assuming the universe was empty and began to inquire why it no longer looks